One of the features of Dublin in the time of the insurance companies was the use of fire marks. Each company had its own image, its own symbol that it tended to use. Again, we spoke about this. It's not people are largely illiterate, so there's no point putting a sign up with the name of the company. The house is insured by the Sun Insurance Company or whatever. So what you did is each company had a particular image that they used that was associated with them, and when a house was insured, the company would put a fire mark on the house to show that it was the insured premises. Because especially in the period before the postal service came in, it could be difficult to identify individual buildings on a street. So the fire mark ensured that that particular premises was the one that was insured. Now, the very first of them that would have been seen in Dublin would have been very similar to this. This is a Royal Exchange, an early Royal Exchange mark. And it has, the image of the Royal Exchange. It also has, as a lot of early insurance companies do, it has a crown. Now, there weren't government companies, they weren't government backed, they had no particular right to use the crown as part of their imagery, but it was obviously a more loosely regulated thing in those days because quite a few of the companies tended to use them. The other thing they would have on the end of the panel here was the policy number for that particular premises, so that would be shown. Over time they changed. That's a mid 1700s. By the late 1700s, by 1790, they had simplified the mark to an oval mark, still containing a crown, but it's no longer a separate item. As you say on the other one, the crown was very susceptible to damage. Still, again, has the policy number here. Now, this is a mark which can still be seen, not this particular one, but an identical mark can still be seen in Dublin today. One of the very few that remains. At one time, these were very much part of the Dublin streetscape, but one of the few that remains is a Royal Exchange mark from the 1790s, which is on the Patriots Inn in Kilmainham. The mark would have changed again around 1810, and the Royal Exchange went to this mark. We've looked at one of these earlier, one that had more, the remains of more colour on it. This is a simplified version, what collectors call a keyhole mark. The Royal Exchange, a lot of insurance companies changed their marks in the early 1800s, especially around 1810. They changed to this in 1810. It uses less lead. It's a simplified mark. Other companies like the Sun and other companies went to tin marks at that point. And the reason for it was the price of lead had shot through the roof because the Napoleonic Wars were in full swing and lead was a munition at the time. So the price had escalated. On the Dublin streetscape at the time, if you were to walk through one of our Georgian streets, you would see very, very vividly coloured fire marks. Now, we look at some examples later of later lithographed marks, which would give the kind of the visuals of what a coloured mark would look like. Most of the marks that remain, the early marks, were lead and tend to have faded back to the bare lead. The later lithographed ones actually show the colour schemes involved. If you were to walk down, as I said, a Georgian street in Dublin, you'd see a number of marks. Any house that was insured would have one. Some houses would have more than one. If the value of the house was more than any one company was prepared to take on, a number of companies might jointly insure various aspects of it, and each would have their fire mark on the front of the house. So it would have been very much part of the Dublin street scene. A few remain. I know myself in the last 20 years, I can think of two that disappeared. One in Capel Street, which was plastered over on the front of a building. Cement rendering was put over it to make the building waterproof. And in another case, one was actually removed. An Atlas mark was removed where a building was being repointed, ironically to protect the heritage of the building. But in doing it, they removed an Atlas mark, which was never replaced. We can look at some other marks and, as I say, show the colour schemes, show the vibrant colour schemes that would have been used. As I say, had you walked through Dublin 200 years ago, 250 years ago, 300 years ago, you would have seen these. They would have been very, very much something that would catch your eye. They had a number of purposes. One initially was to show that the house was insured and which insurance company you should send for. But gradually they developed other lives as well. They were really the first form of street advertising. Each company was able to put a sign on the outside of a house to say this company is insured, by whoever. And if you were a person of means and went walking down one of Dublin's better streets where our, the ascendancy lived, the judges, the politicians, whatever, and you saw that particular companies predominated, you might be inclined to go to that company for your insurance. So they were a very early form of street advertising. In their own way too, they were a status symbol because it was shown to the world that, look, I have so much that I have to insure it. So it was probably the 18th century equivalent of parking a Porsche outside your front door.